have,
Tough quorum without her.
yeah.
So let's start the meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. So we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
With that, public input session. Actually, I kind of had a question about that after the. I'll bring this up later. So public input. Do we have any public input?
Hi, I did not receive any public input on my email, so no.
What a surprise. So we'll continue.
Luann, you get points for being outdoors. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on to the Paul Mays update. Tim, do you want to try to give them a quick summary? Or you just want to give it off to Megan?
Well, Megan, first of all, are you the presenter or are we waiting for Paul?
I thought Paul had our agenda, but he didn't tune in time, it sounds like.
Yes, so you could have the option of waiting a bit if you want. And if you don't want, then I'm fine giving kind of a brief intro and turning it over to you if you'd like.
We didn't necessarily have slides, so I can probably wing it if you want to just do a little intro and then I'll start talking. Maybe Paul will get on.
If he joins us, he joins us. So first, welcome Megan. And Megan.
Do we need to do a roll call first? Don't we usually start off with a roll call?
We can see everybody's name for everybody who's logged in, so I think we should be good.
Okay, because I can't.
Jenna is keeping track of that, correct, Jenna?
Well, I guess we could. Let me just run through who is here. Sean is here.
I can't see.
For those people calling in or can't see, Sean's here. Barbara's Frederico's here. Carol Cott, Kathy Barber, Jenna, Tim, Luann, Keeling, Barry, Phil, Tony, Kate, Margaret, and Megan Brennan. So that's who we have at the moment, just for future reference.
And the speaker there was Brian Best, which will show up on the transcript, I hope. So, so Megan today presented for about 2 hours and 15 minutes to the department heads of the library and the library staff members who are on the building committee. I see that we have Paul Mays joining us. Welcome, Paul. We are just doing a brief intro to you guys. Megan presented some of the latest updates in terms of the actual design of the building and took a lot of questions. What kind of door is going to be here? What kind of window is going to be there? You know, that kind of stuff. So it was an informative session for the staff, not the whole staff, but the basically the leadership, the admin, IT, and department heads group, plus the other 2 staff members, Amy McCarthy and Brianna Wakowitz, who are on that committee. So we got an update on the building today, and then Paul and or Megan are going to update you guys more on the status of the project as a project and how it might be sequenced and built, rather than going into brass tacks details about how thick a window is and that sort of thing. Is that correct, Paul and Megan?
Yes, that's correct. A short update to keep the board posted, and we actually have an issue to discuss tonight that it's a proposed modification to the timeline that we'd like you to consider that has some pros and cons, but the committee felt that it would be important that the entire board weigh in on it. So that's sort of where we are today.
So you guys can take it away.
Oh, great. Okay, sorry. I had 6:10 down, so I apologize if I checked in late.
Are you ready though?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Paul's always ready to talk.
That's true. So if everyone is able to hear me, I assume. I'm not sure. It looks like everybody's muted, so we'll go with that. There were really 4 items on the agenda for tonight's meeting from our perspective. The first one, we wanted to give you an update on the budget that's been developed by Turner Construction. Turner is the construction manager, so they are an agent of the owner. They're not the contractors building the building, but they are the folks who are managing the construction and the budget and the sequencing timeline and so forth. And when it comes time to go out to bid, they will also be a big part of that process. And of course, during construction, they will be doing coordination on site with on-site supervision. At the moment, the task that they've been working on, and we've been coordinating with them, is the development of the budget. So you can imagine that when prior to the referendum, a budget was put together, those were some early numbers based on conceptual drawings and designs. As I heard Tim mentioning, the drawings that were presented today to the department heads and so forth are significantly more sophisticated because we're closer and closer to going out to bid. So it's a much more complete set of construction documents, and one which we've asked Turner to price again to verify that we are on budget. So the good news is we are, in fact, still on budget. We are well within the design contingencies that were built into the original budget. And so we're in excellent shape in that regard. It's currently under budget based on the numbers that were put out for the referendum. Of course, the bid market can be volatile, so we need to make sure we're keeping a reserve or a contingency. But we still have plenty of contingency, and we're under budget at the moment. So good news all around, and it puts us in a good spot on the timeline, because this would be the time if we found out that we needed to cut something back or try and save some money, that Megan and I would be working on how we would value engineer some things here. But given that we're in good shape for that, we see no reason that the SED submission, that is for the building permit to the State Education Department, will happen by the end of the month, which puts us exactly on schedule with the school's architects, so that both projects will be in at State Ed at the same time. So really the end of next week, which is the end of May, it should be going to the State Education Department and entering their queue for the review process. That has been changing over time. When people first started working from home, the queue had extended out to 20, 24 weeks, but it's back at 12 to 16 weeks, which is sort of the reasonable time frame from what it was before this emergency situation. So really what we're looking at is getting it in May. We will continue to develop details on the project, but it will be reviewed over the summer, and we expect to see it back in roughly October based on their current review schedule. Megan looked at the SED website just this morning. Megan, I think you said the next project for review was submitted when?
I believe it was March 30th, so they're doing pretty good.
Okay, so that so that's good news. Either they're working from home or using consultants or some combination of the two, but they seem to be in good shape with that. So those are the items that right now, updating the construction manager and our work, everything is going smoothly. Everything's ready to go in next week. We're in good shape. So I have 2 other agenda items, but let me stop there and ask if there are any specific questions or clarifications anyone needs. No? Unless anyone wasn't able to figure out how to unmute, we're in good shape.
Question.
Yes?
I mentioned this to Tim, and it's a very minor item, but one thing that's lacking on the current building outside are some outside outlets. If we want to put lights on, hanging from the roof for holidays or whatever, you can't, because there's nothing up there.
Okay.
Is that part of the plan? Because I know I had mentioned it to Tim, but it's such a small item, I didn't know if it got into the mix.
So what you're discussing are convenience power outlets. That is uncommitted to a specific thing, but circuiting around the building so that we can plug things in, whether it's an outdoor event or holiday lights and so forth, as you say. I know we have it on the addition. Megan, did we retrofit any around the existing building?
Yes, Tim had shared this request with me a while back, so it is included in this project.
Excellent. So Barbara, good question, and it looks like we're in good shape. It wouldn't be that difficult to add even now, and that's a minor item, but I'm glad you're on top of it. Those are exactly the things we want to make sure don't slip through the cracks, because as you say, there's like a big picture that we have to keep working on and developing, and sometimes those little things they get put aside for the moment. I'm glad you're bringing it up, so don't ever hesitate to do that.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item for discussion is it's coming up this summer, the Division of Library Development Grant. It's administered through your library system, through the Upper Hudson Library System. The application portal is supposed to open in June, and applications will be due at the end of summer. That's the usual pattern. We've used that device to fund other components of the project. If you recall, one of them was the restrooms and HVAC renovations as well. What we're looking at right now, Megan and I are trying to look through the project and find a few components that we can break out for this year's application. Now, there's a couple of caveats to that. One is that in this year's budget, the total statewide grant program went from $34 or $35 million down to $14 million. That was done before even this emergency happened. Regularly, the budget proposals added in or take it out. The legislature has been very good about adding it back in, and in fact increasing it over the last several years. But this year, based on the approved budget, it is significantly lower than it has been. What that means for Guilderland is that Upper Hudson Library System's portion of that will be on the smaller end. In other words, what it was 5 to 10 years ago, rather than what it's been the last couple of years. So even if presuming we are going to apply, because it's money that's there, we want to make sure we're leveraging your local funds as much as possible. It's likely to be a smaller component project just because of the availability of funds. The other unknown, and I've participated in several long teleconferences about this with no real answers yet, is whether even that 14 million will be in the budget by the time all is said and done. Obviously, given the current circumstances, New York State is scraping for money everywhere, and we're not positive. But having said that, Megan and I will continue to do the work to identify some things, talk to Turner about breaking out that cost part of their budget, and then we can get a submission in later this summer. We still have plenty of time. We don't have an extended issue like SHPO review or things like that to go through the State Historic Preservation Office. So we're confident we can get something in. We're just not sure what that piece will be just yet. But we'll strategize, we'll work with Tim, and we'll update the committee and the board as we go. Any questions on that? Okay. The last item, and this is one that we're going to ask you to think about and try to give us some direction. This is a proposal, and I credit Megan for really thinking about how this would best benefit the library. You'll recall, and I mentioned it earlier this evening, that we applied for a grant last year to help fund the restroom renovations. Those are the large ganged restrooms down by the meeting rooms, the large restrooms, as well as some mechanical equipment and other pieces. We've always talked about bidding that, even though we have to account for it separately because of the grant. We've always talked about bidding that as part of the large project. That is one contract or one prime for each of general construction, plumbing, mechanical, electrical, but doing all that work at once in order to get an economy of scale. That is, it's a big project, people are more likely to bid it. However, given the circumstances over the last few months, an interesting idea is the fact that the library is currently not occupied. And while that's the case, it means that those renovations might be able to move forward in a way that's much cleaner, that does not interfere with patrons or with staff, and that later on when we do the big project or the rest of the project, that will already be done. So we won't have a situation where we're trying to shift people around and try and create access to restrooms, because that part will already be taken care of. So that gave us sort of this unique opportunity to say, can we take advantage of this? Do we want to take advantage of this? I will say there are pros and cons to this approach. What it would mean is, instead of finishing up the overall set of drawings and specs and submitting them to SED next week, we'd probably spend 2 weeks getting this project out to bid, just the restrooms. And what that would do then is give us the chance for the library to have the work done when it's empty, no staff or public inconvenience, and a cleaner later construction. It's a smaller project, but contractors may be hungry to do that kind of thing right now anyway. The cons, or the reasons it might be a problem, are that we lose a little bit of that economy of scale. We're now bidding a separate, smaller project as opposed to one big one, and then later bidding the big one. And we would obviously have an overlap of general conditions. So a contractor would come in, set up, do all this work, and then leave, and then other contractors would come in later to do other work. So it's not quite as clean in that regard. There's also an additional cost. On our end, it's minimal. It's probably $3,000 to $5,000 to do this out of sequence. It's work we would have to do eventually, but we're basically double doing it now because we have to do a front end, we have to bid it, we have to do all that. The bigger cost would be for Turner to act as the construction manager for that sequence of work that's happening when other work is not happening. And that's more likely to add $50,000 to $70,000, I think was the number they gave, to do that work out of sequence. So do I think that working like this would save $50,000 to $70,000 and be a wash? I doubt it would be a complete wash, but it would be a convenience for a lot of other things, including how you reopen the library and set up that ongoing process as we find whatever the new normal is. I think of one of the memes that I've been seeing where somebody said, for the love of God, while everybody's not commuting, can you just fix all the roads? This is the time to do it when nobody's out there. And that's sort of what this idea is. Nobody's there. Let's take care of this important thing, and it's done when we're ready to go. So it would delay our submission by a couple weeks, and it would cost more money. This is a big question. We wanted to run it by you and see if you had any thoughts on it. We can do either one. And I think Megan disagreed with me, but we've discussed it enough. I think for us, it could go either way. We don't have one preference or another, but that it's really your call.
So let me jump in here. Thank you, Paul, for presenting it. Tim presented the idea to me. Most times when we get presented ideas, they're a lot more cut and dry. This one was really was quite the decision. So I definitely want to make sure the whole board took a look at it. So if I could condense it down into kind of two biggest pros and cons, it would be, it's going to cost more money, would be the biggest con. The pro in my mind would be that this might be a project we could do when the library is closed, and therefore less disruptive to the public in the future. Is those kind of the two biggest?
Those are the big ones. Yes.
Okay.
Politically, it gives you something to show the public when you reopen. That look, we've got something new already, and it's a taste of things to come. But the big issue is getting it done when you don't have staff and patrons vying to use restrooms in a building that's already suffering from that.
I'd love to hear input from board members. I know this is not a easy call.
Right. The cost is not minor. You're absolutely right.
Tim, could I ask for a clarification?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I'm a little bit confused as to which bathrooms you're talking about. Are you talking about the new bathrooms in the administrative area and in the children's area, or are you just fill me in with which ones you're talking about?
The restrooms that are at the west end of the building where the meeting rooms are, they're multiple fixture restrooms, the large ones, not the small single fixture restrooms. So it's the public women's room and the public men's room that are off that little corridor near the end. And Megan, did it not also include the small ones next to it, adjacent to it?
Yes, it includes the new single-person restroom adjacent to the existing multiple hole restrooms, and then it also includes renovating the two staff restrooms that are behind the multi-hole restrooms, as well as the additional single-hole restroom on the staff side. So it's renovating the two large restrooms, the two small restrooms, and then adding two additional restrooms.
But it's that core area, everything on the west
Core
end of the
area.
building. It's not the children's area or any of the other ones.
No, it's nothing at the far end of the building where the addition is going.
Okay, thank you. Does that help, Barbara?
Well, it does a little bit, but I guess I'm still with sticker shock with $50,000 to $70,000 to,
Agreed.
and also you said it'd take 2 weeks for you to draw up the drawings, and then those don't have to be submitted to SED, right?
Well, let me clarify that. They've already been submitted to SED because they were approved as part of the grant last year. That's why we can do this piece now. We don't have to wait for SED. It doesn't take 2 weeks to draw them up. They've already been drawn up. But what we have to do is put the front end together, the bid documents, get it all set to go out to bid. There's a logistical process to get it out to bid, essentially, that we have to clarify the scope of work so that they know they're bidding on just this piece, just this portion, and not the whole building or the addition.
Yeah. The other concern I have is, it's 2 weeks to do that, and then God knows how long more it would take for Turner to do their thing. And hopefully, within a month, we should be able to open unless, God forbid, this thing catches fire again.
And that's an excellent question. When phase 4 happens, that libraries can, we don't know the answer to that yet. You're right. Yep.
So I guess my gut impulse is to just sit and wait, put it part of the big project, but I could
Plan, in other words, go with the way we were doing it.
exactly.
And I understand that completely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Other thoughts? I
have a question. If let's just say hypothetically, we approved it tonight.
Right.
When would it actually be finished, the renovations on the bathrooms?
Well, we would put it out to bid in a week and a half to 2 weeks. There would be a 3 to 4 week bid period. Really, we'd be looking at the end of June, beginning of July to get the bids in, and then mid-July for contract signatures, and they're probably starting that then end of July, beginning of August. Megan, do you disagree with any of that?
Turner had put together a quick draft schedule. They thought it would be wrapped up mid to late September.
Okay,
So
from what I was saying, if they begin in August and wrap it up by middle September, that's about a 6 week period of them tearing into it. And yeah, that sounds probably about right.
So I got to agree with Barbara that based on that timeline, I don't think the work is actually going to be done when there's no library personnel or users in the library. I think it's still, even if we expedite it, we're still going to inconvenience the staff and the public. So I
And so that
can't
is,
see,
yeah.
and personally, since we're going to be ending up doing that anyway, I can't see spending that extra money. That's my
Okay.
2 cents.
Sure. Other board members?
I have a question that's not related to the bathrooms, and I might have missed this because I got on a few minutes late, and maybe it came in an email and I missed it, but I noticed once again we've changed something on the plans, and I was moving the cafe from the Tower Center room out of that location. I was just wondering, I know there was talking about trenching and moving the kitchenette type of stuff we'd have to add in there. What is the cost to keep it in the location that we had pretty much agreed on? Because it seems like we're constantly changing this thing, and then we see this, somebody wants this. I'm just wondering, at what point do we take a plan and just stick to it?
Well, the modification you're talking about that we discussed at the last board meeting is at the beginning of tonight's meeting. I was talking about Turner's latest update on the cost estimate, and we're under budget. So they've already accommodated that. That was in the plans that they were reviewing. to shift the location of where that cafe was. That was in the set that Megan sent to them. So we certainly didn't proceed with that without talking to you first.
Yeah, I've been busy, and so I might have missed it.
Okay.
But anyways, since I'm out of the loop on it, the only thing I would say, and if it's already been sent and the process is going, I think it defeats the purpose of us having that outside plaza area, which was supposed to be where people could take a cup of coffee or whatever the case might be and sit outside. We've now moved it past the vestibule, and also with the existing display cases that look like they would stay in that location, the cafe's closed off to people. I just think it kind of defeats the purpose. That's my personal opinion, but.
Well, let me just address it very quickly. Or ask Megan too. Megan, you're more familiar with the plan. Do we not still have access to the cafe after hours? And aren't we also adding a plaza outside of it?
Yes, both are true.
Okay.
Well, and actually, what we're going to do is do that original plaza that's outside the Telecentha room. Leave that one is because it's sort of a nice feature as you go up to the upper level parking lot, and then do an additional one outside of this proposed cafe space so that your sort of whole front entry area is plazas that people can sit and relax and enjoy.
Although it won't all be paved, there's planting areas and concrete areas, but it does still include an outdoor area, as you were mentioning, Peter, and it also has access to the lobby when the library's closed. So, so we did try to accommodate that, and that was discussed when we first talked about the change. But you bring up a good point. Things can't change forever, obviously.
It's every time. I mean, they're changing constantly.
Yeah, but as it goes into state ed, really after that we can only really work on details. You know, the basics are sort of set, and even those changes haven't been tremendous. We were trying to save money by going where plumbing exists already and so forth. So that's part of why we're under budget too. You know, we're now not having to trench over to the Telecentha room with plumbing and things like that. It's over where the plumbing already was. But I understand your concern. You don't want things to constantly be shifting. But we're pretty close to, we're at the point where architecturally we don't want to change anything because, you know, our fee is what it is. And the more it changes, you know, we don't make money by making changes at this late stage. Yep.
Okay.
This idea about the restrooms was something, again, it doesn't benefit us. We wanted to present it to you in case it was something you wanted to take advantage of, but that's why it was being presented. So
does anyone else have any thoughts on that? I'll just put mine out there. You know, I would say I was 60 against it, 40 for it. So I would say I was more against it than for it. We've had 2 board members speak out kind of against this. Does anyone else want to speak for the proposal about the bathrooms? Tim, you're on mute.
I don't have any disagreement with Barbara or Barry. The only thing that I think we've underemphasized in this discussion is that I believe that if we did it now, the chief advantage would be that it would shorten a future closure that would be necessary in order to do this. That's at least the way that it was originally presented to me. I believe there are sequencing ways if the decision is made by the board not to do this. I believe there are sequencing ways to build the new bathrooms before we renovate the old ones. Thus, we will always have working bathrooms. But Megan and Paul, if you'll refresh my memory, I thought this was going to allow us to be open for a couple of weeks where we originally thought we might be closed in the future.
And that's what I was referring to when I said construction later will be cleaner. That is, they don't have to work on that core area. It's always available. And we're not trying to create temporary shell games with where the restrooms are or aren't in any given week. It does clean that up some, and likely, as I didn't say that specifically, but you're right, it likely reduces the number of days physically you would have to close over the course of the construction project. But I don't know that Turner hasn't gotten into that much detail yet where we've done all that sequencing. So that's likely to change on the fly as we go. So, but that was one of the points. You're absolutely right. That we did talk about that.
So when we boil it down, we're trying to decide whether we want to spend $50,000 to $70,000 for basically a convenience later, or lack of convenience later down the line.
So that you don't have a lack of convenience down the line. That's correct.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, correct.
essentially, and again, to take advantage of this current situation as best we can. Although the point's been brought up, by the time this all happens, who knows what the situation is 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks from now.
Paul, I have one more question.
Yes, Barbara.
The two current public bathrooms,
Yes.
if my recollection is correct, we put new faucets and fixtures in the ladies' room. Maybe a year or two ago. Time flies, so it may have been more recent than that or further back.
I think it's longer. Okay.
In the men's bathroom, didn't we redo all the partitions a few years back? I know we steam cleaned both bathrooms. What kind of renovations are you talking about for those? And we put the low flush toilets in. I remember. What kind of renovations are we talking for those two?
New tile finishes throughout. The grouts and the spaces between the tiles are all difficult to clean. So we are actually using a larger tile to reduce the amount of grout space and an easier clean grout. New, even more efficient water use fixtures for water faucets as well as lavatories and urinals. And essentially cleaning the whole space up with new finishes. Megan, do you know the date of the last renovation of those restrooms?
I don't have that information.
Anyone from it's been a few years, I think, because the aging of some of the finishes is, I don't know. It was discussed for early on as one of the areas that needed some upgrades, both by staff and by the public. It came up in a lot of the public meetings too, but I don't know when it was last renovated, Barbara. I'm sorry. It looks like Tim might have an answer.
Sure. Barbara is correct that all of that stuff has been done during my time. Some of it, like replacing faucets and so forth, strikes me as so inexpensive as to not really be a factor in the larger question that's being asked here. And then we did change all of the dividers in the men's room. We did not do the women's room, if I remember correctly, although Margaret might remember that. But one of the things we've learned in the last week or two is, and I, apologize for getting so direct about this. A lot of the female board members here are not people familiar with the men's room, but the partitions which separate people at the urinals now need to be higher and deeper to prevent people from breathing on each other in what some people are calling the new normal. So yes, we spent $600 putting new partitions in the restroom, but and I believe there's a plan to reuse part of that in the going forward. But I think what we're talking about here is like akin to your house. You can put a new sink in your bathroom, and you can even put a new toilet in your bathroom. But if you, and I know we're not trying to sell the library, but if we're trying to sell the house, we might redo the entire bathroom, modernize it, and update it. And I believe that's more analogous to what we're talking about here.
And that's true, to update it, but also to make it more maintenance friendly. It currently, the technology of how we design the restroom finishes has come quite a way to make them easier to clean and keep germ free.
And save a lot of water.
The fixtures are also a lot more efficient even than 5 years ago. This was also significantly paid for by the DLD grant. I don't remember the percentage, but it was over 50%, wasn't it, in the end?
52.5.
Okay.
With the additional 16,500 we were promised last week.
Gotcha.
Okay, Barb, do you have any other questions?
No, just my recollection of the public commentary. I think my recollection was that they were complaining that there weren't bathrooms like in the children's area down at the other end, which we are accommodating in the new thing. I don't remember them complaining about, our current one, but just that there was a lack of facilities at the other end of the particularly in the children's area, in that area.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. There were several written comments about the quote state of the restrooms that I don't think people verbalized in front of everybody, but they were in some of the written comments we received. But you're absolutely right. The verbal ones had to do with the location and number quantity more so than condition.
Okay, so for the sake of time, I'm going to say, looks like it seems to be strong enough opposition to this. So I think it looks like we'll just go back to the normal, the normal proposal, unless someone wants to speak up right now. Here's your last chance. All right, with that, it looks like it's dead. Thank you for I appreciate the suggestion. I always appreciate you guys thinking outside the box. And quite honestly, if they hadn't reopened the capital region just a couple days ago, I think this would have made a lot more sense. So
right.
So
we just felt we should talk to you about it. So thank you for making a decision so quickly as well. It's one of those things we can now scratch off and move on. So that's great. Thank you.
Perfect. Great.
All right, we will keep you posted. We'll talk to Tim about whether you want us at the next board meeting or not, but we're going to keep going. And again, we're going to plan on submitting end of the month. So about a week from now.
Sounds good. So I have something to share for you, you and Caitlin. Hopefully it comes up on my screen. Yeah.
Caitlin. Megan?
Did it show up? Can you see what I'm trying to show you? Or is it still me?
I have a black. Oh.
There we go.
Oh my goodness.
Beautiful.
Everybody, but you and Caitlin would really appreciate it. So
yeah, thank you so much. We'll turn you
Big Yokohama
to
Tire
fans.
fans?
She's beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah. So,
Oh my God. Ryan, no one looks at you like that, right?
no one looks at me like that.
not anymore. Great.
That's wonderful. How many months now?
A little over 2 months.
Oh, she's big. Very beautiful.
Well, thank you, everybody. Unless there's anything else, we'll excuse ourselves and let you finish your meeting, but we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good.
Paul. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Paul.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, so now let's move on to treasurer resignation. Chris Aldridge has resigned, I guess officially as of maybe 5 o'clock today. So we have that in email form. And now we can swear in Anthony. Am I forgetting anything, Tim?
Brian, don't we need to vote on his resignation?
Isn't that always an open question? But let's vote on it anyway, because I feel like every time someone resigns, we ask this question. And I don't know if we ever get an answer. So let's vote on it.
Brian,
just because we always do. Yes.
I believe that you have to read out loud the letter of resignation, so it can be put into the minutes, and then we have to accept it.
Okay, I can do that. So effective immediately, I hereby resign my position as treasurer of the Gilliland Board of Trustees for the Gilliland Public Library. Sincerely, Christopher Aldridge. So
I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Chris Aldridge as treasurer.
who was that? Is that Peter?
Peter. I said I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Chris Aldridge as treasurer.
Next time you make a motion, just say your name, just because
Apologize.
it's clear. No problem. Oh, and by the way, Peter and Nareen have joined us since the last time I've called out names, so everyone knows. Okay, so Peter's made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Barbara. All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion first.
Anyone opposed? Okay, with that, it is adopted. So now we will move to appointing
Brian,
Anthony. Yes.
I just wanted to say thank you to Chris for all his years for the board, and a big thank you.
Yeah, he's done so much for the board. When I was president, I leaned on him in so many ways, including making him treasurer after he left the board. So I certainly appreciate Chris a lot. If maybe the word mentor is the right for me, but it's certainly very close to that. So yeah, thanks to Chris. So with that, we'll move to appoint Anthony. Anthony, how do you say your last name?
It's pronounced Rapicki.
Anthony Rapicki. All right, thank you. So is there a motion to appoint Anthony Rapicki to the treasurer?
So moved.
Moved by Barbara, seconded by.
Second, Peter Hubbard will second.
Great, thank you, Peter. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, unanimously adopted. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So now I need to read you the oath of office. Is that accurate, Tim and Jenna?
Yes.
So do you have your oath of office in front of you, Anthony?
I do. Yes, I do.
So I'm going to read it, and then you can just repeat it right after. So
Okay.
repeat after me. I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of New York, and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Treasurer of the Library Board of Trustees according to the best of my ability.
I do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of New York State, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the Treasurer of the Library Board of Trustees according to the best of my ability.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So, and Anthony was wanted to present his first treasury report at this meeting, which is great. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Anthony.
Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Also want to thank Carol for her help in working with the financial statements. I thought I would start with the income statement first, and I have in front of me the March and the April reports. Obviously, what stands out from looking at those is the income or the revenue for April, largely impacted by the COVID procedures. Most of the income or the revenue has been brought down to zero. There was a spike in interest income. That's largely the result of 3 CDs maturing during the month of April, which obviously caused the recognition of interest. That money has been put into a money market, and the interest in that also is being accounted in that number. You probably noticed the tax levy for the month is 0. Normally there's a payment in April. That has been delayed, but it should be posted today or tomorrow, so that money is coming in. Also on this report, it shows the variance of the actual versus the budgeted total income to be -62, but with the 92,000 of the tax levy being posted later this month, that should balance out to be something more in line with what the result was for March, so a positive number. Moving on to expenses. At the prior board meeting, there was talk of adopting Hoopla. The cost of that has been incorporated into the materials line on the expenses, and that was roughly about $2,700. The expenses for materials has dropped compared to the budgeted, just solely because librarians aren't buying books, not in the office to buy materials. Other things to note for the expenses, on a prior board meeting, Tim had mentioned extra cleaning expenses to sanitize the building. That expense is incorporated into the April expenses. And he also mentioned that he was investigating the acquisition of cleaning products or cleaning equipment. That has not yet been purchased, so that expense is not reflected in the March or the April numbers. On the check register, you'll also recognize an expense of $84,960 for architecture fees. In case you're wondering where that lies on the financial reports, that's not an expense just yet, but that is showing as a revenue item on the balance sheet, which is consistent with accounting practices. With that ties into looking at the balance sheet and comparing the March and April balance sheets. You'll notice that there has been fluctuations with the CDs and the money markets, largely the result of the maturities that I mentioned previously. And then cash went down to cover some of the operating expenses while revenue was delayed, I guess, with the tax levy. Fixed property and equipment largely is the same, and other items of the balance sheet are largely consistent with prior periods as well. Does anybody have any questions on what they're seeing on the income statement or the check register balance sheet? Nope. I guess to summarize, it looks like items are pretty consistent with what we would expect given the time that we're in and comparing prior year, prior month amounts. One last item to note is there might be a transition of amounts from the materials lines to the, I'm sorry, from the programs lines to the materials lines. And I think that's a topic Tim is going to discuss later on in this meeting. So I won't talk further about that. I'll let Tim discuss that as he sees fit.
Anthony, I got one quick question. The tax levy that was delayed, is this going to be for the rest of the year? Do you know? Are we going to be, is the total amount going to be less than we're expecting, or is it just going to be delayed for the rest of the year?
Yeah, my understanding is that the amount will not be impacted, just a function of when it gets deposited.
Okay.
It should have been deposited during the April time period, but due to most likely administrative delays, they got pushed back until this week. I think it's going to be this week. So about a month and a half.
I can fully understand the delay. I just want to, I'm just concerned that it's not going to decrease the amount too.
I don't think so. The amount that's going to be coming in will be close to 93K.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Brian, I have a question. It's my understanding that we obviously have just sworn Tony in. I want to verify that we've sworn him in until June 30th, and then we would need to swear him in again at the organizational meeting in July. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the, so I stepped away for a second. Are we still have both March and April, or?
Yeah, that concludes what I was going to discuss regarding those reports.
Okay, so.
Hey, this is Barry. I'll make a motion. We accept the March and April report given excellently by new treasurer Tony.
This is Mark Keeling. I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimously adopted. Thank you, Anthony. You did a great job of your first treasurer's report. First of many, we hope.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, next is the check registry. Is there a motion to approve the check registry? Tim, did you want to talk about it at all? I think it speaks for itself.
Yeah, I'm good unless people have questions.
Barry, again, I may as well make the same motion to accept the check registry for May.
Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mark.
All right, Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously adopted. All right, check registry. So next up is coronavirus reopening update. So a lot has changed since this agenda was adopted. So Tim, you have the floor.
Okay, and I see my microphone is on, so that's good. It is so hard to even think about where to begin. Everything is constantly changing, and just staying ahead of the changes is essentially a full-time job. But administrators and department heads have been busy writing a plan. It's a constantly changing plan. It takes guidance from lots of different government agencies. And we've also been on a desperate hunt for buying PPE for both staff and, if needed, for patrons. We've had some success, but right now we might have enough PPE in the building to operate for a week or two. So we're hoping that gets fortified before patrons anyway are allowed in the building. Just as a concept, I'm following my own instincts and also the leadership of most others in the library world and in other places when I say that public health is my main concern. And I've said to a number of staff members in meetings that the term public health to me means the health of both the staff and of the public. in any interactions that will occur outside the building or inside the building, it does take one element of staff and one element of public to have that happen. And so I think everybody's health is important. I do think that the staff health is, how can I put it? My primary concern. I don't want to say it's more important than the patron health, but if you get enough staff sick, you can't be open. So the staff is very, very key in this. We're working on a plan to quarantine materials, and I can certainly answer more questions about that. As everybody knows, 2 or 3 days ago, I sent the Guilderland draft plan along with an attached version of the Upper Hudson plan. And then, as I hope all of you know, about 3 or 4 o'clock today, I sent the current and I believe finalized Upper Hudson Library System plan. And as I took a break from board meeting preparation to scan that plan, a light bulb went off on my head and I said to myself, we should just adopt this plan. And one reason that I make that argument is that whatever plan you adopt, you need board approval. And adopting a plan that was designed by a committee at the system doesn't tie your hands at all. You're going to make your operational decisions on the ground. And that's actually mentioned in the UHLS plan. This is a guideline. You do this when you have the right number of PPEs to do it. You do this when you have the right number of staff to do it. But I believe the state is going to require that we have a board authorized plan. Perhaps they have already. That's a good example of how it's hard to keep up with what's being required. And I know that when I sent that to you all, I said, let's discuss it under new business, which is what I had arranged with Brian in a quick conference earlier this afternoon. I'm certainly fine answering any questions about any aspect of our reopening planning and either adopting that plan, or I should say voting on that plan either now or later under new business, whatever the board prefers.
I would say let's, we're talking about it now. Let's discuss the plan. There's no need to just wait till new business in my mind. And it's probably, other than what we talked about in executive session, the most outstanding issue. So let's just talk about it when we're as fresh as possible. The plan, which I hope, I haven't really even had a chance to read it since I was swamped at work today, but I did read it a little bit. I guess my question would be, Tim, were you able to read it in the minimal amount of time we've had?
Yes, I mean, I've read it probably 5 or 6 times over the last 3 weeks, and I've been in meetings about it. While I was not on the committee at Upper Hudson that put it together, I declined that opportunity because I thought it would be more important to work on behalf of our library. But I think it's an excellent plan and very, very close. I mean, another option would be to take it and rewrite it so it says Guilderland Public Library here and there and so forth. But essentially it would be, very, very close to that plan anyway. So I'm intimately familiar with it, having discussed it with 29 library directors and Tim Burke on 4 occasions now at this point.
This is Margaret, the Assistant Director, and I just want to underscore the importance of this plan as Tim is introducing. And another layer on top of that is that since libraries at this juncture have to operate similar to what a retail business is, we are not able to open unless we have a plan in place. That doesn't mean we have to submit it to the state, but should we be asked at any time to produce it, we must be able to do so. In addition to that, we must maintain on site a reopening safety plan template from the Department of Health. And again, in that document that must be maintained in perpetuity on site, it asks about a planning document that's kept. So we're following the steps accordingly so that we do have everything ready and prepared to open. Thank you.
Okay, trustees, any thoughts? Or you know what? Maybe I'll go ahead, Barbara. Thank you.
I've read it and I agree with most of it, but on stage 4, they say you can allow some public in, but not the bathroom use. I don't understand that at all. I mean, Home Depot, Lowe's, Target, Walmart, for weeks now, they've all had their bathrooms open, and, you know, people have been going in and out. So I certainly don't agree with that aspect at all, that you have it open for like limited numbers, but there's no bathroom usage for the public. It says consider, so I would like to eliminate that one sentence.
I essentially agree with Barbara. There's a lot of back and forth going on about bathrooms, and there are valid points made on both sides. And one thing that I would say in response to Barbara's concern is, I'm fine if we strike the sentence, but there are other sentences in it that says, you know, this is a guideline. You do what you need to do at your own library, which I think kind of covers those kinds of concerns. My own personal, despite having read 2 or 3 articles today about bathroom use and so forth, my own personal thing is that a lot of people who use libraries are either old or young, and sometimes might have to go to the bathroom without, you know, being able to, you know, wait till they got home or something like that. And also that bathrooms are where you wash your hands. And so washing hands is something we're trying to encourage. I think the negative is essentially people think it's going to take a lot of energy and a lot of cleaning supplies to keep it clean. So there's even a middle ground that was suggested in a staff meeting the other day, which is to say, you know, we're trying not to use them, but if you feel that you must use them, go right ahead, you know. But I lean at the end of the day to having the bathrooms open. And I also don't think that even though that sentence is in there, that we have to do that just because that sentence is in there.
This is all very preliminary, so having a plan in place, I mean, are you going to be amending your plan as you go? I mean, because the example of bathrooms, I mean, it's, you know, you can allow them, even if the plan says you shouldn't, or so there's a lot of different things that you might be doing that are or are not in the plan. So what's going forward in terms of just modifying the plan as you go? Because I mean, you have a plan, but as you mentioned, things change day by day. So what's the, if we have to approve the plan, do we have to approve amendments, or can we give you authority to amend it as needed?
That's what I would prefer. And I would suggest using the model that you guys came up with. I think it was 2 meetings ago when you put Brian and I together in charge of deciding how long the closure would go, based on, you know, government recommendations and so forth. I also think that the plan is, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the government or anything like that, but I think the plan is a piece of paper that does not commit us to anything in particular. So if we, I'm trying to think of an example, but let's use the bathrooms as an example. If in stage 4 we say, well, we don't like that part of the plan, so our bathrooms is open, I would say that are open. I would say that we'll try to remember to go, and we'll make a notation in that plan that we decided to open the bathrooms. But in my mind, what's more important is opening the bathrooms, not making sure that on that day we changed the plan and voted on it and so forth. And I personally think it's very impractical if you guys as a board want to be in a model where you would have to approve every change to the plan. I think that'll slow us down a lot, you know, and lead to meetings that are not regularly scheduled. So I like that idea, Kathy, if others do. I would say not just me. I mean, I think I could do it, but I think having a board member such as Brian or anyone else to be part of a 2-person.
What I would recommend is, whoever's president would get together and approve it with Tim, and then you just kind of share it with the board if there's a change, so that we're aware. that there was a change. That would kind of be my suggestion to going forward.
I do like that. To me, it's more important that we share, like, let's say we open the bathrooms in zone phase 4. It'd be more important to share that with the public and the board than it would to go edit the document, in my book.
Right,
Hello?
and a lot of things like that might come up. I mean, a lot
Yeah.
of changes and also the timeline, like how long it takes between phases is not really there. I mean, like it could be a week, it could be a month, I mean, we don't really know how long each phase is supposed to last.
Agreed. And nobody knows. It's not just the people on this meeting, it's, and one thing that I think everybody needs to hear, just in case it hasn't occurred to them, is that, the state government could say, the capital region is now closed again. And I'm not sure the plan even addresses what you do in a case like that, but I think it's entirely possible that you could be in phase 3 and then receive binding guidance from the state saying you're going back to phase 1. So I just think everyone needs to be aware of that possibility based on how the virus and the public behave.
I think a lot of it's covered in a couple of clauses there, like right in the beginning where it says that libraries may need to move forward or backward between these levels in compliance with official guidelines. That could be essentially we're back below level 1 because the state's closed again, or whatever along those lines. But also, while we don't know how long it's going to take to get from level 1A to level 2, you might get there and decide there's a problem and move right back to level 1A. So it really is a moving target, and at best we're going to be able to guess when we think we might be able to get to a spot, but you really don't know if moving forward was a good idea until you do it and decide you need to move back.
Good point.
Hello?
Hello.
Hey,
Sounds like Herb's
Hi,
here.
Herb.
Hello? Can anyone hear me?
We can.
We can.
Okay, great. I couldn't get on the WebEx, so I had to call in.
Well, we enjoy hearing your voice one way or another.
Okay.
So we were just what we were discussing was, sorry, I moved my agenda. We were under the coronavirus reopening update, and we were, it wasn't obvious, talking about the reopening recommendations. So
Okay, and
that's
where
we
is
were.
that on the agenda? Because that's a new item.
We were going to
That's
do it under
H.
new items, but it's actually we moved
okay,
it to
H.
under H. Yep. So this made more sense to talk about it now when we're maybe a little fresher.
Okay, fine, thanks.
So did you have any input at this juncture, Herb?
Well, we were talking about all sorts of these problems at the Upper Hudson meeting last week. And one of the problems is that the governor has cut the amount of money going to libraries. So that may have some effect on what the library is going to get going down from the Upper Hudson. So that could potentially affect hours that are opening hours and stuff like that. I don't think we've come to a conclusion exactly how we're going to open yet, right?
That's basically what we're talking about with this report.
Yeah, how
recommendations.
we're going to open and how many people and what hours, going to be. That was some of the things that were mentioned at the Upper Hudson, and some of those things can be adjusted if the money coming in isn't there.
Brian and board, hi. So I just want to address Barbara's issue with no public bathrooms. It doesn't make sense where it is necessarily on the chart, but if you read the accompanying document that goes into much more detail, level 4, step 2 says limited walk-in service to the public, open to public for transactions only. So it seems like there's still no meetings, no programs, and still closed stacks. So if that's the case, I think if stacks are open, bathrooms are open, but if the stacks are closed, I don't necessarily see it's necessary to have restrooms open if people are only coming in, transactions, and leaving.
That makes a lot of sense. I didn't catch that either. So is the idea that at that phase, are we going to be looking for a way to allow people to essentially order their books online, come in and pick them up and check themselves out?
Yes.
Awesome. So yeah, if it's basically drive-through library service, then the bathrooms wouldn't necessarily have to be open to the public, and that makes more sense. But again, it's a consider opening to the public, so it's something.
Sure. And looking at level 5, the first thing it says step 1, social distancing. You can't have one-way traffic in our hallway with those bathrooms at this point. There's no way if someone is in that hallway in that bathroom and someone needs to go in that they can maintain a 6-foot distance.
It would almost be worth considering going gas station style on it, where one person's allowed in a restroom at a time and you hand them a key. But, we've got a long way to go to get to that point, and like you said, there's adjustments to be made along the way as we get to each phase.
I also want to bring up, because our staff are CSCA represented, does any plan need to be at least shown to the union, if not approved?
I have a meeting scheduled with CSEA Unit 1. I'll actually be more accurate. A meeting has been requested and we've exchanged dates and times for next week when we hope to be available to have such a meeting. I think that it's a great question, Kate. And I think that we're not quite there yet. It's obviously a good question to ask, but at the moment, that's where we're at, really. That's a very good example of where we're at. These 29 libraries in the system, I think off the top of my head that maybe a third of them are unionized. I don't know if Margaret happens to know, but it would tend to be the larger libraries that are unionized. And my guess is that in all cases, it's CSEA. So it's something that remains to be seen, but it's obvious that CSEA plays a role in what we do. So they asked for a meeting to ask us what we were thinking on those very questions. Nobody's got any conclusions just yet, and in part because some of the questions that will arise will be unprecedented. The contract covers a lot of things, arguably might cover everything related to a pandemic closure, but I'm not a lawyer, nor am I a union representative or official, but if there's any part of the reopening plan that is of concern to CSEA, they will certainly let us know, as they will let other libraries in the system know. But I believe that the UHLS committee at this time is obviously cognizant of that, but also just assuming that the hours of a library and the operation of a library are by and large determined by the governance of a library, and that the CSEA has an opportunity to raise questions at any time and to raise concerns at any time, and we will deal with them when they come. That may sound simplistic, but there's a lot of predicting the future that frankly, I don't think either CSEA or the library leadership of the different libraries has had time to do yet.
So, assuming someone else doesn't have a comment, I kind of see two options for us. We can either approve this plan tonight, or we can wait. I wouldn't say wait more than a week. We would have to call a special meeting and either approve this plan, another plan, or something else next week. But with the capital region officially, entering reopening phase, we have to do something. So those are the two options. I guess I would prefer to adopt the plan tonight. As we said, we can make amendments or create a procedure to make amendments as we go. But, you know, if we're just going to wait a week to, you know, essentially adopt this, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I read, you know, a fair amount of it. In all honesty, I probably wasn't going to read the whole thing front to back anyway. So I feel good enough. And it sounds like a lot of people spent a lot of time. And most importantly, our director spent a lot of time looking through this. So I feel good with that. But I will leave it up to kind of get some input from the rest of the trustees.
I don't think we've been presented with an alternative. I think that's the best course would be to approve it at this meeting.
I agree.
I will make a motion.
Go for it. We're waiting.
I make a motion to adopt the UHLS reopening plan for the Guilderland Public Library.
I second it.
Who's second? Was that?
Nareen.
All right, thank you. So is there discussion on this?
I have a question. You know, just like everyone else, I got mine this afternoon, and to be honest, I did not have any time to read it. We had a 5-hour fire today, and I did need to get a little rest before this meeting. Again, I agree with Brian that we need to do something, and I agree with him that, you know, Tim has spent a lot of time on it, and I think Margaret and Luann and everybody, and they did a great job. But again, not having read it at all, I'm just a little concerned. But I just would like to get it. Did everyone else have time to actually read it, or as Brian did, read most of it? Because if everyone else had a chance to read it and feels comfortable with it, then I am willing to vote for it with the understanding that, you know, if there is something that we see in there that is a big concern, that we can address it, you know, down the road a little bit.
So let me just jump in. I guess I have one maybe suggestion. If people do have suggested changes to it, would it be appropriate to let Tim and myself know, you know, like much like Barbara's suggestion about the bathrooms and stuff like that. That way, you know, we don't have to get bogged down into a long board meeting, or maybe we want to get, you know, go through this stuff in a long board at our next board meeting. So maybe that's a possible solution.
So can we approve it tonight? But again, if we see something in it, to let you and Tim know, and, you know, we can address it down the road then? Because I agree, we need to get moving on it, and I have all the confidence in Tim, you know, and Margaret and Luann and everyone else who worked on it. But you never know, there might be something in it that one of us might see and say, wait a second. So as long as we have that understanding, I definitely support this.
And we'll kind of continue the process, like we mentioned before. If there is a change, we'll, you know, send it out. So everyone is aware of the change. We're not just making it, and I don't think we have to put that in the resolution. We'll just kind of.
We're talking a month from now, our next meeting. I mean, who knows what the situation will be a month from now? So we might need a whole nother plan. You know?
Yep. No, I'm sure it'll be a lot different. I'm sure we can't even foresee what a month will be like. So.
I mean, the plan has a lot of flexibility in it, in the language even, so that it's not really like a hard plan we have to follow each phase of. And I imagine when we're at phase whatever, you know, Tim and his staff are going to be really focused on what the next phase is and what the goals are for this phase. And at that point, if there's any adjustments or changes that need to be made, it'll be brought up. I think we should approve it as it is. And if we need to approve anything that puts us in that same scenario where you and Tim can work out minor changes as they need to happen and just bring it to our attention after the fact until we have a board meeting, or unless there's a discrepancy in what you both want and we feel like we need to be in a bigger discussion about it, I think we should approve that process as well, so we can just get that squared away now. Everything moves too fast for us to wait a month and talk about it.
Okay. So is there any other concerns anyone wants to address?
I don't have a concern, just an observation. This phase 4, I think they're allowing 10 people to come in our huge library for pickup only. I just don't understand, compare and contrast all that's been going on for 8 weeks at these large department stores, and we don't have horrendous numbers, but that's just a commentary. We'll go for it. It's a piece of paper and another bureaucratic necessity, and let's do it. And come a month from now, like Kathy says, it's probably going to have to be revised because they'll change things again.
With that, unless there's another comment, all those in favor of adopting the plan?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimously adopted. Thank you, guys. Okay, so then we'll move on to committee reports. I think only one committee met, so, but let's just run through it quick. Building and grounds, Barry, did you guys meet?
Nope.
Finance, Caitlin?
We did not meet.
All right, personnel and labor management, I'm guessing is going into executive?
Yes.
Okay, policy,
No meeting.
Herb, UHLS, did you want to kind of comment?
UHLS met last week and discussed a number of things. Actually, it was quite a long meeting because people were very concerned with what's going to be happening with library reopening, as well as what monies will be coming down from the state. And this was, of course, before the plan was written and released, which was, I guess it was today, according to the email. And we also met to decide on the awards that are usually given by UHLS to the trustee of the year and the volunteer of the year. And we did decide on that, and that information will be released when UHLS releases the program awards. That there was some problem with getting that done and judged by the service committee, so that was not ready yet. So at that time, when those program awards will be released, then the individual awards will also be released. There will not be a dinner this year, so there has to be another mechanism to make those awards, and that's to be determined.
Okay, thanks, Herb. Foundation, I know that the foundation just met or is in the process of meeting, so I'm guessing Mark probably doesn't have too much of it.
I don't. They're meeting right now as we speak.
All right, well, I don't know how much they can accomplish. I don't know, Tim, do you know of anything that they're up to that you want to comment on? I'm not aware.
Well, I would like to share briefly kind of an interesting proposal that I made to them. And it's a good example of how the Upper Hudson Library System libraries are cooperating and sharing ideas. But the current CDC recommendation is that you quarantine material for 72 hours after it's returned and before you bring it into the building. So Bethlehem came up with an idea, which we are also working on, and it costs about $4,000. So I've asked the foundation for that $4,000. But basically, the idea involves purchasing 4 sheds and putting them in the parking lot and having people return their material on day 1 in the first shed, and then you lock it at the end of the day, and on day 2, they return in the second shed, etc. When you get to fill the 4th shed, then you empty the first shed and you can take it inside with the reasonable assurance that almost all of the virus that's on the material has been neutralized at that point because it can't survive without a biological host. So I've asked the foundation, we've initially looking at the same sheds that Bethlehem, which was looking at, which were $994 each. So I asked the foundation for $4,000. Subsequently, we believe we may have found a shed that will do the job better, but for $594. And then Sean Silvernail, who, yes, is on the meeting. Sean is always one of our most creative employees. So Sean is stopping by a particular vendor of Amish sheds in the area and trying to see if he will simply loan us 4 sheds to put in our parking lot for a couple of months. And allow us to, we would allow him presumably to put up a sign saying sheds loaned from such and such business. But that way we could do the same job without any cash outlay. So the foundation is considering the $4,000 request, but it's just a good example of the kind of thing we're working on. You know, like you may or may not like the idea or think much of the idea, but you know, you have to then shop online, find a shed that works, figure out how you're going to modify it, how you're going to lock it, figure out if it's available, all this PPE that we're trying to buy, you know, we place orders, we don't know if it's going to come, you know, et cetera. So I just thought I'd give it as an example of something that I'm working on that I asked the foundation for a little help with.
Tim, just as an example of how fast things seem to move, the CDC updated some stuff just today talking about the virus not spreading easily on surfaces.
Right, I've read that stuff. Thank you, Phil, twice, I think, and I'm glad you bring it up. And actually another Phil brought it up today, Phil Berardi, whose department is really in charge of receiving all that material, the circulation department. I think at this particular time, not to refute you, but I think nobody knows whether or how long that virus is going to live on such surfaces. I think it's good news what you saw today that the CDC is adjusting that in that direction. But I also think that two things, that 2 or 3 days from now, we may hear the opposite, and also that the vast majority of our public may not have heard that. And I think if we can do this either for nothing or for a relatively small amount of money, it will reassure the public. I honestly feel that our whole business model, that of borrowing something repeatedly by different members of the community, is likely to be called into question by this coronavirus crisis. So I think, you know, I may change my mind in 2 or 3 days, but right now I think that it's still a prudent step, at least from a public relations point of view, to quarantine the material outside the building. And the outside the building part, I'll just mention for the board members, obviously does the one thing where it keeps, if there is virus on that stuff, it keeps it from coming into the building. The other thing it does is it allows us to use the limited space inside the building differently. So with the amount of material that's checked out, we were going to need to use the entire Helderberg or Normanskill room in order to quarantine it. And it would be an imperfect quarantine because you put, you know, 1 day's worth of returns in the Normanskill room, and then the second day's worth of returns in the Helderberg room, and the third day's worth of returns somewhere else. And all of a sudden you have no rooms. But if you ever put 2 days worth in, then you killed the quarantining effect of the first 24 hours that you had there. So again, I don't know if you think we're crazy or not, but these are the kinds of things that are keeping us up at night, and that we're working hard to try to mitigate. I think one interesting thing, nothing against UHLS, but the UHLS directors meet every Monday, and Monday of this week, we were all like, hey, we're good to go. Let's try curbside pickup. And Monday of the previous week, we were closed indefinitely with no end in sight and trying to get New York State to tell us whether we were in category 1, 2, 3, or 4. Again, I'm not being critical, but in that meeting, I said, did something change? Are we no longer trying to get New York State to tell us if we're in group 1, 2, 3, or 4? And to be honest, kind of the end game or the real politic, Tim Burke said, they're never going to tell us anyway. So we've just got to move forward. Libraries, as much as we love them, are a very small piece of the statewide puzzle that the governor is trying to unlock.
Tim Burke is holding a meeting right now with some of the trustees from the various libraries concerning this whole reopening issue and everything.
Right, and I believe he invited at least our board president to that. I was copied on the email, and maybe all of you got it, but I sent him an email right back, and I said, well, Tim, I sincerely hope none of my trustees attend that meeting because they have a board meeting at the same time. And he emailed me back, and he said there will be a recording available, and I believe, I might be slightly putting words in his mouth, but I believe he'd be willing to meet with us as a group if we were, and by we, I mean you, were to want such a meeting.
I would listen to the recording first. I got the email. You know, with everything so new, I didn't know what I would, you know, really learn. But yeah, it would be interesting to see, read the, listen to the recording at some point. So, so I guess we're good. We'll move on to director's report unless anyone else has another comment. All right, Tim, you have the floor again.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to try to go fast because I know you guys like that. The general areas we've been working on are obviously the virus and the reopening. There's also been significant work going on the building renovation project. As most or all of you know, there was significant time spent in the last month working with the personnel committee. In terms of leading the staff, it takes a lot more time to have these Zoom type meetings than it does to do things in person. So we had 8 department head meetings in the month instead of the normal 3 or 4. I've been taking a lot of webinars on legal and medical type things related to this. I do want to sing out praises for our staff, which I believe is amazingly engaged at all levels, not just the department heads. They are basically reinventing their careers, reinventing our institution over the short term, working on programming and planning for the future. There are too many stars on the staff to single anyone out. And in my personal opinion, most of them are working harder now than they worked during the time that the library is open. And that's because everything takes a little bit longer due to getting adjusted to the technology, but also they're working on the reimagined library at the same time that they're working on what the reopening process is going to look like for each of their departments and so forth. Luann has a note in her report that says they're not just managing, but innovating, which is pretty awesome. The social media effort and the website effort have been wonderful, involving Luann, involving Christina Ronald from the PPS department and the 3 gentlemen in our IT department. A tiny little thing, the $500 or $600 expenditure for the Little Free Library has been a big success. It's gotten us a fair amount of attention. People are there. Like if you drive by the library, you will almost always see a car parked in front of that Little Free Library and someone standing there using it. The IT guys are doing a great job trying to keep everybody running from home. Their services are available should board members have any technological problems related to being board members. They're happy to help. Just let Sean know or let me know. The online programming has really been, first of all, wonderfully made in terms of video, but then surprisingly successful. The online trivia nights, the online story times, the cookbook club, etc. And,
I'm sorry to jump in and cut you off. How is the trivia going?
It's going very well. I think I remember 34 people for the first one and 40 something for the second, if I remember right. And those, when I say people, I think those are teams. So they could be anywhere from 1 to maybe 4 people. But people really, don't have a lot to do, at home. And if you're a sports fan, there's nothing to watch on TV. I'm wrapping it up here, but the real amazing success story is the new library cards generated since March 13th when we closed is now up to 579. That's as of yesterday. That's all people who are clamoring to use the online stuff. And lastly, a little shout out or a big shout out to the librarians in the youth department, because for a long time during the shutdown, they had to plan for a regular summer reading program, an essentially non-existent summer reading program, or a virtual summer reading program. I hope I don't misspeak, but I believe it's basically been decided system-wide that most everybody will be doing their programming virtually and just encouraging a lot of reading and writing, which is the core of what we do, as opposed to quite as many events with ice cream and parades and celebrations and so forth. So that's a quick update on the work that we're doing. And obviously, I'm happy to take questions.
Tim, one of my neighbors stopped me and made a comment about how much she enjoyed the little library.
Super. You know, as I don't know if people know this, but Maria and I put one in our front yard as well, and it's been a real hit in the neighborhood. And then, without announcing anything, the one that we put in front of the library inspired someone who's doing well enough financially, and so she contacted me, and she is trying to finalize the idea of spending about $600 to buy one to place somewhere in town, likely at one of the fire departments. And so I can't say too much more than that. I don't know if she wants to be an anonymous donor or you know, the opposite, an open donor. And I'm not quite sure if it's finalized with the fire department in question, but I've been doing a little bit of work on that in my spare time. They really are good things to do. I think every neighborhood should have one, and that's actually my secret hope, is that this picks up speed a little bit, and we end up with 5 or 6 more of them in Guilderland. Thanks, Herb.
Any other comments?
Tim, one of the things that I've heard from people, they love your uplifting commentary on the sign, and they look forward to you putting a few more up there.
Thank you. Well, largely that's, of course, Luann, although every once in a while I kick over an idea to her. But I do want to, I'm glad you brought that up, Barbara, because I want to mention that, you know, and it's not often that I would mention church in a board meeting, but I'm a member of Christ the King Catholic Church, and they are doing live streaming of Mass on Sunday morning. This our priest always ends the Mass with a joke and with like kind of a positive note. And so this last week, the positive note was that he had driven by the library and he had seen our sign which said, "We miss you, stay safe and be well." And he called us out by name and even mentioned my name. Other than the day I got married or baptized, I think it was probably the first time my name was ever mentioned in church. But anyway, it was kind of nice, and I think good publicity for us as well. And I'm just going to throw in response to that, improvising that, you know, the Guilderland Teachers Association did a food drive in our parking lot today from 4 to 6, and Luann was over there at the start and then apparently made it back home here for the meeting. But she took pictures which have already been released to the media at 5:15. And I presume on Facebook as well. And then I've gotten a couple of messages during the board meeting from people saying that there was a real steady turnout of people donating food. So that is just awesome. The food benefits the regional food bank, which is in Latham, but which serves the Guilderland Food Pantry and the Altamont Food Pantry.
I sent information out to a bunch of people concerning the food drive, and people seemed interested. In the town clerk, Lynn Buchanan, asked whether they also would accept monetary donations, and I couldn't answer that.
Well, the answer is yes. And if you know, any donor drove through, I would think they would. I worked at a food drive for some veterans organizations at Crossgates Mall a week or two ago, and we didn't get as much food as we wanted, although we filled 3 trucks, but we did get a number of financial donations, which is great.
Okay. Any other comments?
This is Erin. Yes, I just wanted to say that, you know, the librarians are doing a stellar job, and my kids really look forward to seeing what they post on a GPL family Facebook. They've done some challenges. The librarians are coming up with quite interesting and engaging things to keep the kids busy, and they really just enjoy doing something and challenging themselves aside from whatever schoolwork they're giving, if they're in that age bracket, and doing something inventive on the side and then posting a picture about it. So I think it still is making them feel part of that library community. So my hat's off to everyone who's really, you know, putting their minds together and coming up with these great things for everyone to do. And also, Luann, thank you so much for all that, you know, you're doing with the sign, and thanks for the sign, because my kids ran home and said, you need to sign this up for the Star Wars thing. And I'm like, okay, one more thing to do. But it's nice. It's there and it's visible. So it's staying within the community, even though we're closed. So kudos to everybody and thank you so much.
Thank you, Noreen and Herb.
With that, is there a motion to approve the directors and staff report?
I'll make a motion, Caitlin.
Second? Is there a second? Seconded by Barbara. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously adopted.
Hey, Brian.
Yes.
I have one other thing to add, which was not on the report, but it happened this evening at about 5 o'clock. And I hope you'll all be okay with it. But a local businessman has paid for some banners that are going to be hung all around town to congratulate the Guilderland class of 2020, which doesn't get to graduate in the way that other classes have graduated in the past. And so because I'm a member of the Chamber Board of Directors, I was asked if the library will hang one of these banners on the front of the building. And I've said yes. I basically could still turn that around, but it strikes me that it's a little bit like the blood drive we held or the food drive, that board members should at least know that that's my plan. And this would be a good time to tell me if that's not a good idea.
Thank you, Tim, for bringing it to our attention. All right, with that, we will move on. I see nothing under old business. So then we'll move on to new business. Tim, you want to talk about this request?
Sure. So I could do a lot of, I could give you a lot of numbers, but basically the online reading and downloading and viewing of material is way, way up. It's up like 25 times over this time last year. And all of the big libraries in Upper Hudson are spending a lot of money to bolster it, because the more people that use it, the higher the demand, then the shorter the supply. In the traditional stuff, which is the Libby and Overdrive stuff, Hoopla, the new service, actually allows simultaneous use by as many people as are interested, but they don't have all the same books and movies that the other ones do. So it's a step in the right direction. But at any rate, everybody is spending more money. We have spent more money, still within the guideline of our collections budget. And our collections committee met last week, and we will come in essentially either on or a little bit under budget for our collection. But we would like to recommend, since we're not doing a lot of programming right now, I mean, we are doing a lot of programming, but not nearly as much as we do when the building is open. There's $15,000 left in the programming line leading up to June 30th. And we have a plan to spend about $3,000 of that on various online programs. We would like to recommend transferring the remaining 12 into the collections line so that we can buy additional electronic material for people. And we would predominantly buy what's called advantage material. So this is material that is highly popular, and there are waiting lists for it. And if you buy it under the Advantage program, which is largely what we plan to do, it fulfills the holds of Guilderland patrons first. And then if there are no Guilderland patrons waiting for a particular ebook or e-audiobook or movie, then it is available to patrons from other libraries in the system. But it's the, we think it's a good idea to spend on electronic material at all, but we think the most strategic way to spend on that electronic material is on stuff that people are currently waiting for and stuff that can be used first by people from Guilderland. So we're seeking, yeah, go ahead.
Do we ever get language from Chris about how to kind of make this official or legal?
I thought about that briefly at about 5 o'clock. I could search my email, but when I was thinking about it, I thought to myself, with all due respect, that it can't be that hard. Like we authorized the transfer of $12,000 from the programming budget line to the collections budget line. Would seem to cover it. I I don't know if Margaret, maybe you can search your email because Chris would have emailed us both on that, right?
I know I didn't see it, and I think I was CC'd on the original, so I'm guessing she didn't.
I didn't see anything from, a response from Chris myself either.
She may not have responded, actually. So, and nothing against Chris. She's done a great job for us, but even the lawyers who are trying to put together all these reopenings, like to go back to Kate's question about CSEA, it's just unprecedented, and it's going to take time to sort all that stuff out. But I do think, Brian, that if you passed a resolution like the one that I just said, it would pretty much do the job.
Okay. Any thoughts on it? I guess maybe I wasn't paying attention. What are the numbers? Not that I think they necessarily matter, but what are the numbers?
Okay, so we have $15,000 remaining in the programs and program supplies budget lines, and we intend to spend about $3,000 of that on programs and program supplies. So we would like to transfer $12,000 to the collection line.
Okay, any thoughts, board members?
I would like to make that motion.
All right, motion by Barbara, second. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Who's that?
Mark. I've got Mark in the minutes now.
Okay, Mark is now in the minutes. Okay, so it's seconded. Discussion. Discussion. Okay, so with that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion approved. So with that, we move on.
The new business, I have a question. Does the town expect to have a voting district in the library for this primary in June?
Yes, I'm not sure that I would say the town, Herb. We got a letter from the Albany County Board of Elections, and we signed, we believed basically that we had a duty to help them hold their election. And so we signed and returned the form, and we are engaged in planning with someone named Rachel Bleddy, BLEDI, from the Albany County Board of Elections for receiving the voting machines sometime the previous week. And the election will take place on the 23rd from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
And this is whether or not the rest of the library is open or to what extent?
Yes, it'd be in a sense, I'm so glad you brought it up, but it'd be in a sense like the blood drive we held, where it's held in the Helderberg room. And if the rest of the library happens to still be closed, the way the building is built, we can have the restrooms open, which is probably important for the election workers. And, maybe for the people voting. They did say that they expect a low turnout because there will be a strong effort to do mail-in ballots for that election.
Yeah, and the election workers will probably be wearing protection too, so that will be different from previous elections.
Yep. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Herb. So next up is the meeting of our minutes for last meeting.
Brian?
Yes,
Brian?
yes. Yeah.
I did email people another matter that I believe we should consider for tonight. And it was again today that I emailed it, so I do apologize, but things are moving quickly. And this is the email I sent at 12:05 p.m. That UHLS is recommending that libraries adopt a state of emergency policy, which basically says that its other policies can be overridden by some form of authority involving the director and/or the board. The email that I sent had an example of the one recently adopted at Colony and the one recently adopted at East Greenbush. I do have the email right here if anybody needs me to read from it.
I had a question for that email, Tim, whether NYLA has a policy concerning those things.
Herb, I haven't checked, so I don't know.
Okay.
Which one do you prefer, Tim? The East Greenbush or the Colony one?
I preferred the East Greenbush one. I'm looking at it now, and I think, I can't read all this while I respond to your question. I think the East Greenbush one was just more direct. And, at the end of the day, I hope that you trust me. I think it just basically says the director may have to make a decision that's against an existing policy, and he or she will do that. I think unwritten is, and face whatever consequences happen. So I think that the fail-safe you have here is that I could make a decision that we're going to, serve pizza in the library. But if I made that decision, I would probably, have a whole lot of public opinion against that decision, and probably a lot of board members who didn't like it. So, that's, I think, what these things say. But I think that what we're trying to guard against as an industry here is that, there are people in the world who want to kind of be a bad actor in some way, and they might say, well, your policy guarantees me freedom of speech, so I can wear this T-shirt in here with a swastika on it, and you can't say anything about it. I'm just making that example up, but I think it's meant to give me on the ground authority to take care of situations that might arise, which I would argue is authority that I have anyway, subject to your oversight once a month. I wonder if Margaret, sorry to put you on the spot, Margaret, you have seemed more eloquent to me on the need for this than I am thinking that I'm sounding right now. Do you have anything to say about it?
I think the way we're proceeding, we will comply with any guidelines that are, imposed upon us. I think we're going to be safe.
Did you have any hypotheticals, Margaret, of why we want such a policy?
I'm sorry?
Did you have any hypothetical situations of why we would want such a policy?
The emergency policy?
Yeah.
I think the main purpose is just to provide exigence in the need of special circumstances. For example, if you needed to suddenly close the library. We want to make everybody, we want to make it clear to everybody that you have that right to do that under these specific circumstances.
So I thought of an example. So somebody comes in and they're a scofflaw about wearing a mask, and we tell them that they have to wear a mask or they have to leave, and they respond by spitting on other patrons and staff members. That might be a situation where I need to close the library, at least temporarily.
I think that would be considered an assault.
I agree.
Yes.
I agree. And Kathy, what you're saying, or what I hear when you're saying that, is the law already exists, the civic law to protect us in that regard as well. I think all that we're asking that the director have the authority to do is to react to a situation like that in a way that will prevent further damage.
Right. I think
I
would just say that
they've done similar things, Tim. You've closed it and you let us know, and there's no issue.
Yeah, I did that once because of a water issue. Kathy, you were saying?
Oh, I was just saying that when the town declared a state of emergency, that allowed the town to enforce the governor's executive orders. So it's like saying that you have the authority to enforce, I guess you'd say the proper orders and decisions that have been made about safety in the library. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. If you look at in slight detail at the East Greenbush one, this policy will take precedence and override conflicting policies during a state of emergency. Restriction of services will be determined in accordance with the applicable executive orders from the state and local government and executed by the library director in coordination with the library board of trustees. So such a policy could be written in a way where it would require me to call Brian, for example, first, which frankly is often an instinct of mine, you know, and unless there's an assault going on, usually you've got a few minutes to try to find a board member, you know. So frankly, before invoking such a policy, I might call the GPD if I had somebody in the building spitting on people, you know.
Yeah, I think that's what you would call. Yeah.
So I guess I think it's a good idea to adopt a policy. I guess my only holdup would be, you know, kind of just grabbing whatever policy we saw first and adopting it tonight. And since we're already kind of in this, you know, what this policy would cover, would it, and we're already processing it fine, would it be better to come back next month with whatever recommendation you have, and I'd be good with it, unless you really feel the East Greenbush one is hands down the best.
I'm fine with your suggestion. I think that you've given me already enough tools to, you know, continue to steer the library under these unique conditions. And as, you know, the discussion with all of you, but some of the points Kathy raised points out, I mean, the governor has obviously more authority than me anyway. The GPD is there and very responsive. Like, we'll be able to handle anything that comes up. So I don't mind taking some time to ask Chris Lanchanton to draft something that that would be as good as it could possibly be. And meanwhile, I'll collect from any other libraries that put these together.
But Tim, we're talking one paragraph here, basically. I mean, it's very simplistic. I have no problem doing it if you're comfortable with it. As I said, it's not like a long detailed policy with you know, A, B, and C. It's very short and sweet, and again, another bureaucratic piece of paper that is nice to have in your file.
Yeah, I think it's probably a better idea to pass something tonight. And of the two, I like the East Greenbush, but the other one works fine as well. I'm kind of scanning it as we speak, so.
Just be careful.
You know, that's my only thing is like, we're kind of just
too.
scanning it right now. Not that we weren't the other, like, whereas the other, you know, the major closing policy, you had read through, you know, you said a number of times, but listen, you're right. Barbara's right. I mean, it's only a couple sentences. It's just.
Why don't you read? I'll make a motion to put it on the floor.
Okay. Motion to approve, we're doing the East Greenbush policy?
Yes, and let him read it if we get a second.
Okay. If you get a second, I read it?
Yes.
Okay.
I second it.
Okay.
Phil?
So here's the,
okay.
It was Barry, I believe, right, Barry?
I think Phil and I did it as a tie, so he gets the credit. He's quicker on the Jeopardy buzzer than I was.
So here's the East Greenbush policy. In a state of emergency, the library director will have the authority to restrict services and/or implement immediate procedures as deemed necessary to preserve and ensure the safety of library staff and patrons. This policy will take precedence and override conflicting policies during a state of emergency. Restriction of services will be determined in accordance with any applicable executive orders from the state and local government and will be executed by the library director in coordination with the library board of trustees. Pertinent changes will be communicated to the library community as quickly as possible and as safety allows. And, you know, as a matter of fact, it's almost identical to the Colony one. The differences are so slight that they don't really make a difference.
Do we know, did they come from like a generic one? Did one just steal from the other? I guess we probably don't know, do we?
I don't know, but I sense, and I know Kathy's a lawyer, I sense the presence of a lawyer behind having written this. You know, it's it clearly references higher authority, and it, you know, it's not the most legalese piece of writing I've ever seen, but it looks to me like a lawyer saw it or wrote it at one point. I think we should even go further if we do it and clarify. It says it'll be done in coordination with the library board of trustees. So if you wanted, we could put a sentence in there, you know, after contacting a member of the, what's the top three of you called? You know, Herb, Kate, and Brian, the executive committee, or
Troika.
the Troika. There you go. So,
I don't even think you need that. I mean, the idea is you're reacting to something either immediately, in which case you're going to call Brian after the fact if it's something where you've got to close the building or kick someone out immediately or whatever it is you have to do there. If it's something that's not as immediate, like, you know, we've looked at this and we've decided, you know, we really want to keep people wearing masks for a while, even though technically that guideline isn't there anymore, then you have a conversation about it and enact it the next day or whatever you're going to do. But, you know, I don't think if something's falling into this situation where you need to make a decision that changes policy probably fairly quickly, that we should have to wait to reach out. This should be similar, I think, to the, you know, what we were talking about earlier, where you just coordinate with Brian after the fact, say, hey, we're doing this, making sure everyone's on the same page. And if Brian has a problem with it or suspects the board might, we can deal with it then. But, you know, this is all really fluid. Everybody's got their own schedules and their own problems to deal with. So I think having some faith in you and your staff to make the right decisions here, and as long as you're communicating it immediately, you can react from there.
Just be careful about free speech issues. So that first example that you rose could be a slippery slope, because clothing and armbands and T-shirts are considered under the law to be symbolic speech in the decision of Tinker versus Iowa.
right. Thanks. Thankfully, I haven't had to deal with that one.
Okay, any other thoughts? So then the motion's on the floor. All those in favor of adopting the state of emergency procedures authorization policy as Tim read, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimously adopted.
Brian, I have a question that would fall under new business. I think it does anyway. It really is a miscellaneous, but we don't have that category. Recently, one of our former trustees, I think she was trustee emeritus, Mary Sperano, passed away. I didn't know if the board or the, you know, does anything in this case. I know the library is closed, which makes the situation a little weirder, but do we recognize her in some way at this, or?
Yeah, that I think would be a nice gesture. I don't think I knew her. Did anyone on the board know her?
I knew her since the 1970s. We were in the Guilderland League of Arts together, and in fact, she was the one who got me involved in the library back then with the Friends of the Library, and you know, I've known her and her husband Peter since the 70s.
Well, I had suggested a moment of silence, so maybe we should have it during this meeting at this time, you know, to honor her memory.
I think that's a great idea. So with that, all right, let's take a moment of silence for Mary. That was her name, Mary Sperano?
Mary Sperano.
Let's have a moment of silence for Mary. All right, thank you. Thanks. Thank you for bringing that up, Barry. It was a very nice gesture. Okay, with that.
I will make sure Pete knows. Pete lives in my neighborhood, and we see each other once a week or so when we're out walking. So I'll make sure he knows.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, so any more new business? All right, with that, moving on to approving the regular business meeting of April 9th, our minutes. I have them right here. Okay, is there any changes? Anyone have any suggestions? All right, is there a motion?
Motion, Phil.
Motion by Phil. Is there a second?
Second by Barry.
Second by Barry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, unanimously adopted. So next we have our next public input session. Have we heard anything, Luann?
You might find this hard to believe, but we have not received anything.
Oh, I got really excited there for a second.
I'm hearing crickets out here.
I believe it.
No news is good news, right?
I will say,
My other account and submit a question just to have some activity.
I'd be so excited.
Steve Waxman did like that we were live on Facebook.
All right.
Oh, nice.
I'll take it.
Good to know.
The Altamont Enterprise made a mistake in its article about the library and the library election last week.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, they said that the only two incumbents were Phil and Mark, and that I was a challenger.
Wow. Right, a retraction?
I'll make sure that's corrected
I haven't
this time.
contacted them, but I don't know. They should do their homework.
They should, and I can guarantee that what Luann sent out was correct because I read it every week, of course, before it goes out. But besides that, the nature of the virus shutdown has meant that we've been putting out the same news every week with some slight variations. So that's been in like the last 3 or 4 press releases. And fairly obviously, both Luann and I know who's incumbent. But apparently the Enterprise does not.
So with that, we have executive session. So we're entering executive session to discuss contract negotiations with our administrative staff. So that's why we're entering executive. Can I get a motion?
Wait. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There are 2 other personnel matters that I just want to make people aware of. So I think that the motion would need to say to discuss personnel contracts and 2 other matters.
Well, are the other matters just resignations and stuff?
Yes, but they are not formalized yet. So there are situations I want to make you aware of that may happen.
Okay. So possible resignations. Okay, great. So we'll write that. So is there a motion?
Yes.
Barbara, seconded by Phil. Entering executive session. All right. Opposed? Okay, we're in executive.
Well, let me stop the Facebook Live. Hold on a second.
Hey, so Anthony, I see you're still on. I forgot to say, we love to have you. You can stay on as long as you want, but once you give the report, if you don't want to be on anymore, you're certainly free to leave the meeting. I'm not telling you have to. I'm just, once you give the report, you are a free man.